Know your audience. That's a pretty broad term. I mean, especially when you think about Searchmetrics. I mean, we are coming from SEO. That's our DNA, and we're not leaving the DNA, but we bake the DNA into many more things. And know your audience is a new theme that we invented this year to make people a little bit more aware of what's important for their business, because SEO has changed a lot and many people don't really see it yet. And I will show you a couple examples of why it should be important for your business, and also, I mean, how the data and these insights can also help you to create a better content strategy. Because content in the end is what people consume, right? I mean, if you want to sell a product, you kind of should have the right content on your site, not just a good price. And that's why you should listen carefully, and please, after the session, you should go ahead and ask many questions. So I'm the CTO of Searchmetrics. I'm in the SEO business since 2001. I've seen many things, rising and falling again and again. And when I started, I was even, optimizing for things like Fireball or Lycos, and not even Google, which was very different. Okay, so Searchmetrics, great, and you can also download my slides at this short URL, if you like. Okay, so let's start with a couple things, and this is super important. So today in the morning, I was just double checking how many companies are already doing things like ranking factor studies. And it's funny, it's many companies. So obviously it's a nice thing to generate leads, right? You provide a white paper and then people can download the stuff and you have a great lead source. But actually what I've seen also now is that there are obviously many companies who just do ranking factor studies without even looking of what it brings you as a consumer, or what it kind of creates as insights for the industry. And last year, we introduced this concept of ranking factors are dead. Of course, we still do provide ranking factors, as you will see in my presentation, but the general ranking factors are dead. Because if you generalize and you believe, hey, the average word count for the average optimized site should be this, or the average loading time should be this, or the average click-through rate in the SERPs should be this, very quickly you will see that this is not working for your niche industry, that this is working for the average site, maybe, but it's not really working for you to become very successful. And this is something I'm going to tell you very quickly, and I will show you why these other approaches are all wrong. So for what do you need ranking factors? Like I said, the first one, and that's why we still kind of generate ranking factors, is to find some general trends. But this is really something very broad and something you shouldn't kind of take as the foundation for the insights of your business. And then you have the individual ranking factors who are actually very different from each other. So let's start with some general trends, and that's actually super easy. So we just skip this quick because I wasted a little bit of time with the technique here. Okay, so let's start with ranking factors from the technical side. Super basic page load time. So if you aggregate a large enough set of keywords and look at the pages who are ranking, very quickly you can see there's a trend of pages are becoming faster and faster. That's a trend. I mean, if you go back to UIT, I think one of their core missions is kind of creating a better infrastructure, or putting stuff on the cloud, creating a more reliable, faster loading website. So it's not a surprise that the pages in 2017 are in general much faster than in 2016, for example. And this is the average for the top 10. And if you look at the chart, just to give you a quick idea how you can read the charts, on the x-axis you see the rankings. This is position number 1, so everything that you see here as a value with a peak or with a decrease is related to position 1, and this is position 20, and then everything here in between. And on the y-axis you see sometimes absolute values, like things like the number of links or the number of seconds, and sometimes you have a relative value. And this actually is just a format issue. This is seconds, 5.5 seconds, 7.5 seconds. Obviously, I didn't saw this issue. Okay, if you continue and look at other very basic SEO concepts like the keyword and title tag, because if you search right now SEO tips on Google, you will find pages who are actually many, many years old. And on these pages, you still have these concepts like use the keyword and put it on your title, or put it a couple times on your page. So I think, okay, we should still measure, is it really relevant to have the keyword somewhere on the title? And what you can see here is a huge trend of, this is 2015, so that's over 2 years ago. This is this dotted line here at the top. And then you have 2016 and 2017. And you see that pages that rank, they don't have the keyword that often in the title anymore. That doesn't mean that you now should start removing the title. It means that when you do optimize your page, very likely you should spend your time somewhere else in optimizing the title perfectly keyword optimized. Maybe you make your title a bit more engaging, that you get a higher click-through rate, that people do understand what kind of value they get on your page instead of putting a keyword as many times in the title tag. And that's a trend that's going to continue. That's why you shouldn't generalize something like, put the keyword in the title, done. That's not how it works. Here are some numbers on averages for the top 10. Content. There was a SEOCom last week. It's so funny, and I was talking at the SEOCom 4 weeks ago about content. And one of the things I've mentioned 4 years ago, I can still remember it. I talked about content is becoming longer and longer. And I was seeing all the smiling faces of the text brokers in the world. Oh yeah, more content, more money, right? And that was 4 years ago. And since then, I mean, I've seen many, many articles in SEO about, hey, more content must be holistic content and longer content, richer content, etc., etc. So I was also curious for this study, for the summit, how did the content develop in general, just as a word count factor? And as you can see here from 2015, it's 3 years ago, then 2016 and 2017 in general, I mean, just looking at the word count without everything around, I mean, like the navigation, etc. In general, the word count is becoming more. So the basic concept in general is, obviously, there are more words on the pages who do rank at the moment. Just keep this in mind as a general trend. Here you see the numbers, so it's a quite a significant difference from 2 years ago to now. So obviously, content is an important factor. But is it always the size that matters? Does it mean that if you have more content, you become more relevant? Because if your competitors on average have at the moment 1900 words on average, you just create 2500 or 3000 words, and then, I mean, you're ready for the future. Is it really the key? And I wouldn't say it's the key because, and that's also new. A year ago and before, if you've asked Google people like John Mueller or Gary Irish, what are the most important ranking factors? And they always said, in the top 3, there's backlinks and there's content. And the number 3 was obviously a year ago RankBrain. And before it was only links and content. And if you ask them now, here, that's a question. Oh, sorry, that's a question from I've blinded someone. Christine Schachinger. She asked, is it still accurate that backlinks is in the top 3? And the answer was, I didn't give a top 3. Actually, I said that it very much depends on the query. And if you ask John Mueller, and that's actually very recent, so that's in September, that's in September 2, he was asked, what is the main important factor for ranking? And he said, awesomeness. And there's a reason why Google is now being a little bit more honest. Because even a year ago, when they said content and backlinks are the most important ranking factors, they were lying. They were lying, and there were many examples why they're lying, because just take things, I mean, simple things like QDF. With a QDF query, so something that spikes very quickly, for example, Italy is not going to be at the football championships next year. Totally unlikely that this is going to happen. It happened. So many pages ranked through query deserves freshness, and backlinks couldn't be any factor at all that these pages ranked. So the good thing is Google now confirms awesomeness is the most important ranking factor. So that's why you're here listening to all the presentations today, because we have all these great speakers with all this cool content, because we really want to make sure that you can make your business awesome too. And then there's this also, I mean, when I look at all these other ranking factor studies with all these super large keyword sets and super general kind of interpretations of the data, the thing is, if you just look at general trends and you just act by general trends, you become more average. So the question to you is, do you want to be an average Joe? So, and I think you don't want to. That's why let's talk about more important things, like all the individual ranking factors that you need to really tailor the things people need in your audience or for potential audience. I have two things now. We have looked at larger industries, like an industry is something like all keywords around health that we aggregated from the top 10 sites in the health industry, and then we looked at overlaps, and then we took a significant keyword set and analyzed these keywords. But it was like general, not just about a very specific purpose. And we did this for 5 industries. These ranking factors are available as a download for free. You can just go on the website and download them if you're part of the industry. If not, just listen carefully to the other things I'm going to say. That's just an example how you can read it, because we always compare these industry ranking factors against the average, which is cool, because then you can see, okay, how does travel, for example, or finance, for example, differentiate against regular ranking factors. And this is important, because you don't want to be average, you want to be better in your industry, and this is something how you can read the data. Some examples. I'm not going through everything, but some examples. Finance. So in SEO, there's since 2 years a very big push towards HTTPS, and Google is also pushing HTTPS, and next year they're going to start to highlight all HTTP sites in Chrome as unsafe. And it's going to be also then on the search results that pages with HTTP are unsafe. I don't think they do it in general, but for example, when it comes to finance, when you search for things like tax calculator, you see already that all pages that do rank at the moment, they have HTTPS. So 7 out of 8 results on the first page have HTTPS. So it means if you want to be a good player in finance and you don't use HTTPS, very likely you're going to have a problem. So this is what I see as an individual ranking factor for a certain industry. You can't generalize it, because when you look at media, for example, there's almost no page who is using HTTPS at the moment, because in media it's often the case that you just want to consume things very quick and then you just leave the page when it's about news and not about a whole kind of sales funnel. In travel, it's similar. Actually, here you can see HTTPS is not that relevant in travel. In finance, it was actually super relevant. So this is how you can kind of read the data. When we go back to the charts, here this is how the chart would look like in that case. Here travel is kind of almost not utilizing HTTPS. Less than 1/3 of pages do have HTTPS at the moment, where in finance over 50% of all pages have HTTPS. So which means, depending on your business, you should make decisions, because the larger your kind of company is, the more complex and the more expensive these decisions are. If you have a large organization and you go to your IT and you tell them, hey, look, you should move to HTTPS or even HTTP2, they will tell you, hey, it's a 1-year project. And you, SEO, you should make a business plan and tell us what's the gain, so why should we do this? So it's a typical thing. So you can use this as a foundation to have good arguments, because there's no general kind of need to move every pages to HTTPS. Okay. So let's continue with all this stuff. Like I said, you can download all these studies. Okay, continue with things like where travel is super different to finance. Like I said, HTTPS, finance leads here to travel, so where's travel different? And just as one example, and there are many others, in travel, people do want to consume more media, like images. And they are not the small images on a page, like icons, etc. No, they are larger images. And when you look at the numbers here, you see that on travel sites, on average, there are between 2 and 3 large images on the page, especially on the pages who do have better rankings. So it means here, these pages have a higher average amount of images on their pages, where in finance, here you see the position number 1 on average has often not even a large image on the page. Let me give you an example. Oh, I have it later. Yeah, okay, now I talk about content length. He can talk a lot, definitely. And if you just read what he's talking and don't listen to what he's saying without emotion and just read, it's actually pretty funny. Could be a comedian. Would be a better job for him. So if you look at average word count, same here, this is where travel is super different than finance. Because if you just look at the rough numbers, on average, the length of the content in travel is way longer than the top 10 here in finance. And if you now remember what I've showed you in the beginning, like the average trend, on average, the top 10 content or word count is 1900. And if you look at travel, it's already 2700. So it's much longer. So that's why you can't generalize something and use it for your business, because you have to look at what your business kind of is about and where what people want to consume. Here's this example. If it's just a simple example, if you search for cheap flights, you have a page who is actually super visual, many images. People kind of feel kind of in this travel world very quickly. If you search for foreign exchange and you just go on the first website, you just have a simple calculator, almost no text, which makes sense, because if you just want to, use a foreign calculator, then this is what you want. You don't need to have a long holistic text if this is something you get out of a ranking factor studies. No, for finance, obviously, it looks a little bit different. Okay, so let's continue, because maybe you're not in one of these 5 industries. So let's continue with a couple more niche things, which are actually super cool. Okay. When I looked at different industries, I wanted to kind of differentiate these industries from each other, also from different purposes. So I looked at dating platforms, SEO blogs, and recipe pages, because they're super different, and I will show you what it actually means. Yeah, let's just take a look at HTTPS quick. When you've seen before in finance, there was a higher coverage of 50% or utilization of 50% of pages. When you look at this, here in recipes, for example, you see that in average, the top ranking pages, they don't have HTTPS at all. So are they in danger next year when Google is kind of promoting HTTPS even more? I don't believe so, because in the recipe space, it's all about you go on a page, you see the instructions, or you see the video, or you see an image gallery of how things are kind of cooked, and this is it. So that's why it's not a surprise that, there's a negative correlation for HTTPS for recipes, whereas there's a positive correlation for HTTPS on SEO sites, because SEOs are often early adopters. So that's why if you just look at these different niches, you see super big differences. But let's continue. There's the next thing, microdata. Microdata is a super big topic, because with all these smart speakers coming, the instant answers that Google is pushing, especially in mobile phones, voice search, all these kinds of things, microdata is one of the core elements to give a search engine very quickly the information you have on the page. So using microdata could be relevant for your business. But is it relevant for every business? No. Because using, for example, schema.org is something that is not relevant for every business, because when you look at the line charts here again, in dating, especially on the first page, there are not that many pages using schema.org. And one of the reasons is very simple, because if you look for something like online dating websites or online dating, I mean, often you look for the vendor, like a Parship or Friend Scout or eDarling, whatever, or Match.com in the US. So you look for a platform where you can kind of find a partner. But if you look at recipes, here, that's the yellow line, 100% of all pages that rank on position 1 and 2 and almost on 3, they have schema.org. And it's quite simple, because if you have things like instructions, that you have the cooking time, the ingredients, maybe a rating from the user, so that's something people do want to see very quickly in the SERP, so that's why Google is leveraging the data. So again, every business is different, and you shouldn't just do everything that every SEO is saying at every conference, like you need to move to HTTPS, you need to use schema.org, you need to write more text. You should really kind of differentiate based on your business. Okay, let's continue a little bit. Search intent is different for each of these industries. In dating, you just want to, like I said, want to have the best platform. In SEO, you just want to have more information or analysis. And recipes, you want to have guidance to very quickly even cook stuff by yourself. Okay, let's continue with a couple more things and why this is so important. Most brands, and I don't have it in my presentation, but I can show you many examples. Most brands, they do a mistake in looking at only transactional queries. I mean, queries that lead to a sale, because they are so obsessed with the revenue that comes out at the end. But if you look at the search volume, how search volume is distributed throughout the customer journey, the thing is, if you just look at one example, it's just one example about the search volume itself. So let me, come on. I have the numbers, I have it here. No, shit, I hit this slide. I had too many slides, okay. So the search volume in general for queries in the awareness phase, so people don't know yet what they want to buy exactly, which model or which brand or whatever stuff, this is where the search volume actually is super, super high. And this is where brands fail. And one of the reasons why they fail is sometimes they even create single pages for each of these different phases. Like in the awareness phase, like you're interested in something, they have one page. For the transaction, they have a product page. But I see brands, Spring Lane, for example, 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago, was presenting at our conference how they are doing it, and they are super successful with this approach. It's one large holistic page with all information, and at the same time a call to action into their shop. So when you still follow this old behavior and you do some keyword research and you cluster it wrongly because you don't understand that you should put stuff together on one single page, you're going to fail in the end, because you can't really win the client, because the client is always in a different phase. And when you only look at the revenue at the end, you can't win the people who are actually in the beginning of the sales funnel. Okay, so how am I doing? I don't have that much time anymore. Okay, let's skip this. Okay, this is one cool thing. Just keep this in mind. When I talk about SEO and content, it doesn't always mean more is better. More content, more content, more content. Often it also means doing housekeeping. Removing content often is something that really kind of can increase the crawlability of your page. The crawler can crawl the more important pages much faster, and you just remove all the other crap that's kind of hindering the crawler to really find the valuable content. No, seriously, I'm not kidding. If you have, for example, a classified and you have a lot of pages, like category pages with almost no listings or no listings, but you let all these pages being crawled and indexed, you just waste crawl equity, and you should kind of have a better way of, let Google know what's important for the crawler or not. And I would tell you very quickly, you have big increases. Then, and this is especially for the conference, I wanted to show you why these big ranking factor studies are super stupid. So I have some interests. I'm always interested in losing weight. I move a lot in Berlin, so I buy often furniture. I'm interested in wine. Seriously, I am. And in scientific content. So I wanted to kind of, look at these very, very niche industries. And it's interesting. I took some ranking factors, so that's the first one. So the red line is about weight loss, so not health, it's weight loss. And funny is here, this big peak and this kind of big kind of difference to the other industries. So obviously it seems in the weight loss business, you really have to have rich media, like videos in your content. And I will show you an example. If you search for weight loss, just weight loss, you can do it for many more keywords in the same kind of with the same purpose. And just look at the first research. Just do it. It's a pretty good kind of example for the whole industry. You see 11 videos on one single page, and still a lot of text. So the word count or the text itself is pretty important. But again, if you just follow general ranking factors, very likely you can't be successful in weight loss. So you have to look at your industry. If you look at something like candle scones, you look at Wayfair, they actually also do a very good job with content marketing. They have a lot of images here, no videos, but also pretty good text at the bottom of the page. So obviously for this kind of search query, videos are totally irrelevant. So why? That's why I want to show you this, when you look at the average amount of images in the text is very different compared here. This is wine, this is scientific content here compared to furniture. Very different. Then last but not least, we talked about the more the better. That we all believe more text or more content makes more sense. Is it really the case? Now let's switch to the next one. Here. Oh, shit. I finished my presentation today in the morning. Okay, but I have it still here. Okay, before I continue, let's talk about this problem. Ads. Ads are very important, especially if you have to finance yourself through the traffic, like the number of page impressions you generate and kind of the content that you leverage. Maybe you have a big brand campaigns, etc. So ads are super important, even in the age of ad blockers. So we also took a look at how many ads are in general on pages. And why is this important? It's important because when you see phantom updates of Google, where Google looks at the user experience or kind of how the user is happy enough with pages, ads have a big influence on people bouncing back to SERP or kind of staying on the page. Then if you look at this, you see here in the furniture space, there are almost no ads on the page, whereas in the health space there are a lot of ads on the page. And it makes sense because furniture obviously is more transactional. They don't need to have ads to finance the traffic, whereas in health it's obviously more kind of the traffic that they need to be monetized. So again, here, if you look at things like, oh, there was phantom, and you have to look at all the ads above the fold, and you have to look at all these kinds of things, it really depends on your industry. So you should always look at your industry and then benchmark yourself. Do you have more or less than the average of your industry? And then you have a better foundation to really make decisions. Don't follow these stupid general ranking factors. And then take a look at this. This is a text about the relativity theory. You see it's a pretty long page, and it's even longer than the scrolling here. There's a lot of text. So when you do the same for a furniture query, dresser with mirror, and you look again at the page, there's just images, almost no text. So that's why we also took a look at the text in general, and you see it's really different for each industry. So let's skip this also quickly. So this is almost my last slide. I was also curious, do you really always need a lot of data to make these studies? Because if you're in a niche industry and you don't have that many keywords, imagine you're in a niche industry and only 50 or 100 keywords, they do describe the most of your industry. Can you really have ranking factors? Yes, you can. So I took a look at 100 keywords of the 4 industries I just showed you, like wine and weight loss and furniture, etc. And I took a little bit more keywords, so 10 times more, like 1,000 keywords. And just take a look at some correlations. Like this is the correlation about ads, where I took the 100 keyword set and the 1,000 keyword set, and you see it's almost the same. It's not completely the same, but it's almost the same. So it's absolutely irrelevant to have tens of thousands of keywords or even more for a ranking factor study, because they only dilute the whole interpretation of the data. Just keep this in mind, because we are really working on, making you smarter and putting things in our software, for example, like these very individual ranking factors, because it's not about the size, it's about how you define a market. Because if you really define a market and you have the 100 most important keywords or 1,000 most important keywords or 10,000 most important keywords, the data will be very similar. It's not about the size, it's about the data set. Exactly. So be unique, be different. This is really the most important slide I have here. I hope you learned a little bit, and you have, I don't know if you have more time, but hopefully you have a couple more questions, because I'm interested in what you think about it. Thanks, everybody.